Have you ever found yourself endlessly scrolling through your phone, feeling that sudden urge to buy something you don't really need, or caught in a cycle of wanting more recognition, more possessions, more distraction? In our modern world, desires seem to multiply by the minute, pulling our attention in countless directions and leaving us feeling fragmented, restless, and strangely unsatisfied. It's as if we're constantly reaching for something just out of grasp, and in that reaching, we lose sight of what truly matters, our own peace of mind. This isn't just a modern phenomenon, it's a timeless human struggle, one that the ancient Stoics understood with remarkable clarity. They recognized that the real battle isn't out in the world, it's within our own minds. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, put it plainly: freedom is secured not by the fulfillment of one's desires, but by the removal of desire. Think about that for a moment. It isn't about getting everything we want. It's about training ourselves not to want things that ultimately don't serve us. This perspective is both startling and liberating. What if the key to a calmer, more focused life isn't about acquiring more, but about wanting less? The Stoics believed that by mastering our desires, we could achieve a profound sense of inner freedom, a freedom that no external circumstance can take away. This isn't about suppressing who we are, it's about reclaiming control over our thoughts and reactions, so we can live with greater intention and less inner turmoil. In this video, we're going to explore practical Stoic techniques to train your mind not to reach for every passing craving or distraction. We'll delve into time-tested methods that help you build mental resilience, recognize which desires are worth pursuing and which are merely illusions, and cultivate a deeper sense of contentment that isn't dependent on external validation or temporary pleasures. This is a journey into understanding how you can quiet the noise of endless wanting and connect with a more centered, purposeful version of yourself. By the end, you'll have actionable insights to start reshaping your relationship with desire, not through force, but through mindful awareness and disciplined practice. Let's begin this exploration together and discover how the wisdom of Stoicism can guide us toward a quieter mind and a more fulfilling life. To understand how to work with our desires, we first need to see them through a Stoic lens. The Stoics used the word orexis for desire, which they didn't view as a character flaw or something inherently evil. Instead, they saw it as a natural function of the human mind, a kind of raw energy that can be channeled. The problem isn't that we desire, it's that our desires are often misplaced, unattended, and running on autopilot. An unchecked desire is like a rudderless ship, pushed in any direction by the winds of external events, advertisements, or social pressures, and this is what ultimately leads to that inner turmoil we feel. An examined desire, however, is one we have consciously chosen to align with our core values and our virtue. This is where the profound wisdom of Epictetus gives us our first practical tool. He urged us to make a sharp distinction between what is within our control and what is not. Our own judgments, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions, these are ultimately within our control. Everything else, from our reputation and our wealth to the actions of other people, is not. A classic modern example of this is the craving for social validation. That deep desire to get more likes, more positive comments, to have our opinions celebrated and agreed with. According to Stoic principle, the desire itself is within our control. We can examine it and choose whether to engage with it. But the outcome, whether people actually like our post or agree with us, that is entirely outside our control. When we invest our happiness in obtaining that external validation, we are essentially handing over the keys to our inner peace to the whims of strangers. We are building our stability on a foundation of sand, so the initial step in training the mind is not to eliminate desire, but to become a careful observer of it. The next time you feel that familiar pull, maybe it's the urge to check your phone the moment a notification chimes, or the impulse to buy something because a sale email landed in your inbox. Pause for just a moment. Instead of immediately reaching, ask yourself a simple question born from Epictetus's teaching. Is this desire aimed at something within my control? Is it about cultivating my own character, my judgment, my integrity, or is it focused on an external outcome I cannot command? This act of questioning isn't about suppression, it's about clarification. It's the difference between being a passenger on a runaway train of impulse and being the engineer who can choose the direction. By regularly performing this audit, we begin to disentangle our well-being from the unstable world of externals and reconnect it to the one thing we truly own, our reasoned choice. This brings us to one of the most powerful and practical tools in the Stoic toolkit, a concept that serves as the very bedrock for managing desire, the dichotomy of control. It was Epictetus who laid this foundation with stunning clarity right at the opening of his manual, the Enchiridion. He begins by stating that some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, everything that is our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our office, in short, everything that is not our own doing. This isn't just philosophical theory, it's a functional map for navigating life with far less frustration and far more agency. The profound insight here is that suffering doesn't arise from the external events themselves, but from our misplacement of desire. We mistakenly attach our deepest wants and needs to outcomes we simply cannot command. Let's take a common, relatable example, wanting a promotion. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the desire to advance in your career, to take on more responsibility, and to be recognized for your hard work. The Stoic issue arises when you tie your happiness, your self-worth, and your inner peace to the attainment of that promotion. Why? Because that outcome rests in the hands of other people, a manager's decision, a company's budget, a competitor's performance. You can control your actions, you can work diligently, you can be proactive, you can showcase your value, but you cannot control the final result. When you desire the promotion itself, the external reward, you are setting yourself up for potential anguish. If you get it, you might feel a temporary high, but soon a new desire will take its place. If you don't get it, you are plunged into disappointment, perhaps even resentment, because you invested your happiness in an outcome that was never yours to guarantee. The Stoic alternative is to shift the focus of your desire inward. Instead of desiring the promotion, you desire to be the kind of person who deserves a promotion. You desire to act with excellence, integrity, and diligence in your work today. You desire to do your very best, not for the reward, but because doing your best is a virtuous act in itself, something completely within your control. This realignment is liberating. Your satisfaction is no longer held hostage by a committee's decision. You can perform your work with calm focus, and whatever the outcome, you can maintain your equilibrium because your self-worth was never on the line. You controlled what you could, your effort and your character, and that is enough. Take a moment right now to bring this principle into your own life. Can you identify one current desire that is firmly rooted in something outside your control? Perhaps it's the desire for a specific person to like you, or for the weather to be perfect for your weekend plans, or for a political outcome you're hoping for. Just by naming it, by acknowledging that the object of your want is not yours to command, you begin the process of loosening its grip on your mind. This act of recognition doesn't mean you have to give up on the goal. it means you change your relationship to it. You can work toward it with your best efforts while simultaneously releasing your attachment to the result. This is the heart of Stoic desire management, pursuing externals with a light touch, while investing your deepest desires in the one thing that can never be taken from you, your own virtue and reasoned choice. Now that we've established the crucial distinction between what we can and cannot control, we can explore a powerful mental technique for applying that wisdom in the heat of the moment. This practice is known as cognitive distancing, and it is our next essential tool for training the mind. Cognitive distancing is the deliberate act of creating a small space between an initial impulse and your reaction to it. It's about becoming an observer of your own thoughts and desires rather than being swept away by them. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius provided the perfect instruction for this in his personal writings, now known as Meditations. He advised himself to constantly ask, "Do you have nature's warrant for this impression?" In simpler terms, he was telling himself to stop and examine the raw data of a thought or a desire before automatically accepting it as truth and acting upon it. Think of your mind as a courtroom. An impulsive desire, like the sudden urge to buy a new gadget you just saw an ad for, is like an emotional, charismatic witness taking the stand. This witness makes a compelling, passionate case for why you absolutely need this thing right now. Cognitive distancing is the act of you as the rational judge calling for a recess. You step back from the emotional testimony and ask for cooler, more factual evidence. Is this desire truly serving my long-term goals? Is it in alignment with my values, or is it just a fleeting reaction to a clever marketing campaign? By creating this pause, you move from being a captive audience to the desire to being its critical evaluator. A highly effective way to practice this is to visualize the desire as something separate from yourself. Imagine the impulsive thought as a pop-up ad on a website or a loud, demanding character in a play. You can acknowledge its presence without having to click on it or obey its commands. This act of mental separation gives you back your power of choice. For instance, picture this all-too-common scenario. You're scrolling through your phone and you see an item that's on a limited-time flash sale. The initial jolt of desire is immediate, a mix of excitement and fear of missing out. Without cognitive distancing, the next automatic action is your thumb tapping "Add to Cart." But with this tool, you insert a moment of pause. You literally say to yourself, there is an impulse to buy, let me look at it. You examine the impression. You might ask, is this purchase a need or a want? Will this object contribute to my virtue or my tranquility? Or will it just provide a brief dopamine hit followed by credit card regret? By objectifying the desire, you drain it of its urgency and power. The next time you feel a strong desire arise, whether it's for a sugary snack when you're not hungry, the urge to fire off an angry email, or that pull to endlessly scroll social media, make a conscious pact with yourself to practice this pause. It doesn't have to be long. Even a 5-second breath can be enough to break the automatic cycle. In that space, you are not suppressing the desire. You are simply choosing to engage your rational mind before your impulsive one. You are applying the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and proving to yourself that you are not your passing thoughts. You are the conscious awareness that gets to decide which ones are worth following. This simple, profound practice is how we build the mental muscle of self-command, turning philosophical theory into lived freedom. This brings us to a technique that might seem counterintuitive at first, but is incredibly effective at loosening the grip of our most persistent desires. It's called negative visualization, or by its Latin name, premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. While that sounds grim, the practice is far from pessimistic. It's a profound exercise in emotional preparedness and appreciation. The Stoic philosopher Seneca was a master of this. In his letters, he consistently advised that we should regularly contemplate the potential loss of the things and people we hold dear. He wasn't suggesting we live in a state of fear, but rather that we inoculate ourselves against the shock of adversity by mentally rehearsing it in advance. This rehearsal does two powerful things. It dramatically reduces the addictive pull of a desired object by exposing its temporary nature, and it simultaneously sparks a deep, genuine gratitude for what we already have in this present moment. Let's take that common desire for a new possession, perhaps a faster car, a newer smartphone, or a designer item. Right now, that object holds a kind of magical power over your mind. You imagine the joy of owning it, the status it might convey, the pleasure of using it. This fantasy fuels the wanting, making it feel urgent and necessary for your happiness. Negative visualization asks you to flip the script entirely. Instead of fantasizing about gaining the object, you deliberately and vividly imagine losing it. You've just bought the new car. Now close your eyes and picture a hailstorm leaving dents all over its pristine hood, or imagine it being scratched in a parking lot. Or even more impactful, visualize your life continuing exactly as it is, completely unchanged without this car ever entering the picture. Would you still be okay? Would your core character, your virtues, your ability to find joy in a conversation or a walk in nature be diminished? This process isn't about manifesting bad luck. It's about realizing that your well-being is not, and never was, dependent on that external thing. The moment you engage in this practice, something remarkable happens. The desire's intensity begins to fade because you've confronted the underlying fear, the fear of not having it, and you've seen that you would survive just fine. You've exposed the desire as a non-essential. Simultaneously, your attention is often drawn back to the good things you already possess that you usually take for granted. That older, slower car, it gets you from point A to point B reliably, and you're suddenly aware of the freedom that represents. This isn't about settling for less. It's about waking up to the abundance that is already present, an abundance that desire often blinds us to. I encourage you to try this right now with something you strongly desire. It could be a professional achievement, a relationship milestone, or a material object. Give yourself a minute of quiet. Picture yourself achieving it, getting it, having it. Then consciously shift your perspective. Visualize the scenario where it doesn't work out, where you don't get the promotion, the relationship changes, or the object breaks. Sit with that feeling for a moment. Notice that the world doesn't end. Your breath still flows. Your capacity for reason, for kindness, for appreciating a good meal or a beautiful sky remains entirely intact. This exercise isn't meant to stifle ambition or discourage you from pursuing goals. Its purpose is to free you from the anguish of those pursuits. It allows you to want things without needing them, to play the game of life with effort and excellence while holding the outcome lightly. By regularly practicing this premeditation, you build a bedrock of resilience and contentment that makes you immune to the whims of fortune, and that is a form of freedom the Stoics considered priceless. Now we arrive at a cornerstone of Stoic mental training, a practice that directly intercepts the momentum of desire at its very origin. This is the discipline of assent. In the Stoic model of the mind, an external event first creates a raw, unprocessed mental image or feeling, what they called an impression. This is that initial jolt, the spark of wanting or aversion. The discipline of assent is the crucial pause between receiving that impression and either giving it your agreement or withholding it. It's the mental muscle that allows you to say, "I see that urge, but I am not obligated to follow it." Epictetus framed this with powerful simplicity, advising his students not to be carried away by the vividness of an impression, but to say to it, "Wait for me a little" impression. Let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test. Think of your mind as a meticulous editor reviewing a first draft. The initial impression is the raw, passionate, and often poorly reasoned submission from a junior writer. It's full of urgency and emotion. The undisciplined mind immediately publishes that draft as fact, leading to instant action. The disciplined mind, trained in assent, holds the submission, reviews it for logic, checks its alignment with core values, and only then gives it the green light, or more often, sends it back for massive revisions. This is the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is that automatic reach for your phone the second you feel a pang of boredom. A response is noticing that pang, acknowledging the impression that says, "Check for notifications," and then consciously deciding whether that action truly serves you in that moment. This ancient practice is perhaps more relevant today than ever before. Our modern digital environment is essentially a relentless machine designed to generate compelling, irresistible impressions. Every notification, every flash sale pop-up, every curated highlight reel from a friend's life is engineered to trigger an immediate impulse and to receive your automatic assent. You feel a vibration in your pocket, and without a single conscious thought, your hand is already moving, your thumb is unlocking the screen. In that sequence, you have given full and immediate assent to the impression that this notification is important and demands your attention right now. You've published the first draft without even reading it. The Stoic asks us to break that chain. When the phone buzzes, the trained response is to feel the impression, but to consciously withhold assent. To say, "Wait, that is a sound from a machine. It does not command me. I will finish my conversation, complete my sentence, or simply enjoy this moment of quiet before I decide if and when I will engage." The profound power in this discipline is the realization that not every internal urge deserves a yes. In fact, most of them deserve a polite but firm no, thank you. The urge for a third cookie when you're already full, the impulse to buy another item of clothing for a closet that's already overflowing, the desire to fire off a snippy comment in an online argument, these are all impressions screaming for your assent. And each time you withhold it, you are not depriving yourself, you are fortifying your self-command. You are proving to yourself that you are the sovereign of your own mind, not a servant to every passing whim. This is how we build what the Stoics called a prohersis, a will that is aligned with reason, a character that cannot be easily shaken by external provocations. I want you to try a small but significant experiment over the next 24 hours. Your task is not to eliminate desires, but simply to become an archaeologist of your own assent. Pick a common, automatic behavior, perhaps scrolling through a particular social media app or snacking when you're not hungry. Each time you feel that initial pull, that impression to engage, press a mental pause button. Just for a 5 count, observe the urge without acting on it. Literally say in your mind, "There is an impression that I should open that app. I see it." In that tiny space of awareness, you have already practiced the discipline of assent. You have separated your conscious self from the impulse. You may still choose to open the app, but now it will be a conscious choice rather than a compulsive reaction. And in doing so, you reclaim a piece of your attention, your time, and your life. You are no longer being carried away by the current. You are learning to steer the boat. This shift in focus, from chasing external outcomes to cultivating internal virtue, is perhaps the most transformative principle in our Stoic toolkit for managing desire. It asks us to redefine what success truly means. The previous techniques like cognitive distancing and the discipline of assent give us the power to pause and question our impulses. But this principle, focusing on virtue, gives us a positive and powerful direction to channel our energy toward. It answers the crucial question: if I'm not striving for that promotion, that purchase, or that praise, what should I be striving for? Marcus Aurelius offered a beautifully clear answer. He wrote in his Meditations, "The reward of a thing well done is to have done it." Let that sink in for a moment. The reward is not in the bonus, the trophy, or the compliment that might follow. The reward is inherent in the act of doing the thing itself, and doing it with excellence, integrity, and good character. This is the ultimate Stoic strategy for desire suppression because it attacks the problem at its root. We often desire external things, money, status, possessions, because we believe they will provide us with a sense of worth, security, or happiness. We outsource our self-esteem to the world. The Stoic argues that this is a fundamental error. Your value cannot be given to you by a boss, a like button, or a new car. It can only be demonstrated by your own actions. Therefore, the only thing worthy of your deepest desire is to live virtuously. Virtue, for the Stoics, wasn't about being pious or perfect. It was about practical wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline in your everyday life. It was about doing the right thing simply because it is the right thing to do. Consider a practical example from the modern workplace. You have a major project deadline approaching. The conventional, desire-driven approach is to work hard because you are attached to the outcome. You want the recognition from your manager, you want the potential raise, you want to outshine a colleague. Your emotional state becomes tied to that future result. If the project is a hit, you're elated. If it's criticized or overlooked, you're crushed. Now, apply the Stoic virtue-focused approach. Your goal shifts entirely. Your primary desire is no longer the praise. It is to act with excellence throughout the process. You desire to be diligent in your research, collaborative with your team, courageous in offering your best ideas, and just in acknowledging others' contributions. You focus on the elements within your control, your effort, your attitude, your ethics. The outcome, whether the client loves it or the budget gets cut, is secondary. You can walk away from any result with your head held high and your inner peace intact because your success was secured the moment you chose to act virtuously. The external result is merely a preferred indifferent, something nice to have if it occurs, but not necessary for your fulfillment. This realignment is incredibly liberating. It frees you from the anxiety of outcomes and the bitterness of unmet expectations. It allows you to engage with the world passionately, but without the desperate attachment that so often leads to suffering. You can want your project to succeed, you can hope for that promotion, but you don't need it to feel whole. Your wholeness comes from knowing you acted in accordance with your character. So take a moment to reflect on your own life. What does virtue look like in your daily actions? It might be the patience to listen fully to a family member instead of halfway while looking at your phone. It could be the courage to speak up in a meeting when you see something unjust, even if it's unpopular. It might be the self-discipline to choose a healthy meal or to go for a walk when you'd rather slump on the couch. Virtue is not a grand, distant ideal. It is found in the small, conscious choices we make all day long. By making those choices the object of our desire, we build a life of meaning that is entirely our own creation, independent of the fickle rewards of the external world. Building on that foundation of disciplined assent, let's explore a beautifully simple yet profound practice that makes all of this possible: mindful awareness. This is the art of observing your desires and impulses as they arise, like clouds passing in the sky, without immediately grabbing onto them or pushing them away. The Stoics were pioneers of a form of mindfulness which they called prosach attentiveness, or a continuous, vigilant awareness of your own impressions and judgments. This isn't about emptying the mind or achieving a state of blank meditation. It's about becoming a compassionate scientist of your own inner world, studying the mechanics of your wants with calm curiosity. The next time you feel that familiar tug of an impulse, perhaps it's the sudden desire for a sugary snack when you're not even physically hungry, I want you to try a different approach. Instead of immediately heading to the kitchen or, conversely, trying to forcefully suppress the thought, just pause, become an observer, notice the entire phenomenon of the craving. Where do you feel it in your body? Is it a tightness in your stomach, a restlessness in your hands, a specific thought repeating in your mind? Observe these physical and emotional sensations with detached interest, without labeling them as good or bad. The goal here is not to defeat the desire but to understand it. By simply watching the urge without judgment, you perform a powerful act of disidentification. You realize, I am not this hunger, I am not this impulse, I am the awareness that is witnessing it. This creates a critical gap between the stimulus and your response, and in that gap lies your freedom. This Stoic mindfulness is a form of radical self-examination. It's asking, what is this desire really? Often, you'll find that a surface-level want is masking a deeper need. The impulse to scroll through social media might really be a desire for connection or a distraction from a difficult emotion. The urge to make an unnecessary purchase might be a search for a quick hit of novelty or a way to feel in control. When you simply watch the impulse without acting, you give yourself the space to discover its true origin. You stop treating the symptoms and start addressing the cause. So here is a practical challenge for you today. Pick one common, recurring urge, something simple and low stakes. It could be the automatic reach for your phone when you have a spare moment, the thought to interrupt someone in conversation, or that pull toward the snack cupboard. Your only task is to catch that impulse in the act and just for one time choose not to follow it. Don't fight it, just watch it. Note how it feels, how it rises, peaks, and eventually begins to fade on its own. You are not your thoughts and you are not your desires. You are the conscious being who gets to choose which ones to follow. Every time you practice this mindful awareness, you are strengthening your ability to act from intention rather than impulse, and that is the very essence of a trained mind. Now we turn to a crucial step in this entire process, one that moves beyond simply observing our desires and asks us to become detectives of our own motivation. We must learn to examine the why behind our wants. The Stoics understood that a desire stripped of its logical foundation quickly loses its power. It's like pulling a weed out by the roots instead of just clipping it at the surface. Seneca, in his profound letters to his friend Lucilius, repeatedly emphasized the need for this kind of deep self-interrogation. He wrote, "We must therefore take away from men all the causes they have for being busy." He wasn't advocating for laziness. He was urging us to question the very engine of our busyness, the desires that drive us to chase things that don't truly matter. He believed that by probing our motives, we could free ourselves from endless, fruitless striving and redirect our energy toward what is truly essential. So, how do we practically apply this? It begins with a simple but powerful habit. Whenever a strong desire arises, pause and ask yourself why, not just once but several times, like a curious child peeling back the layers of an onion. Let's take a common example, the desire for a luxury item like an expensive watch or a designer handbag. The first surface level why might be, because I like it, or because it's well made. That's rarely the full story. Ask why again. Why do I like it? Is it truly for its function, or is it for the statement it makes? The next answer might be, it signals success and good taste. Probe deeper. Why do I need to signal success? Who am I trying to impress? Is it for others, or to convince myself of something? With each successive why, you move closer to the root cause, which often has little to do with the object itself and everything to do with an internal need for status, validation, belonging, or the avoidance of feeling inadequate. This process of excavation is incredibly revealing. You might discover that the desire for a new car isn't about transportation at all, but about a wish to be respected by your neighbors. The urge to constantly check work emails after hours might not be about dedication, but about a fear of being seen as replaceable. The impulse to scroll through social media might be a strategy to avoid sitting quietly with an uncomfortable feeling like loneliness or anxiety. Understanding these root causes doesn't automatically make the desire vanish, but it completely changes your relationship to it. The desire is exposed. It's no longer a mysterious, compelling force. It's an understandable and often quite fragile psychological strategy for meeting a deeper need. And once you see that, you can ask the most important question of all. Is this desire, this particular strategy, actually the best or only way to meet that authentic need? Perhaps the need is for respect. Is buying a luxury car the only path to respect, or could it be more sustainably found through building genuine competence, treating others with kindness, and developing a character that commands respect regardless of what you drive? Maybe the need is for security. Is relentlessly chasing a higher salary the only way to feel secure? Or would cultivating a simpler lifestyle and a robust emergency fund address that need more directly without the constant anxiety of needing to earn more? By understanding the origin of a desire, you empower yourself to fulfill the underlying need in a way that aligns with your values and is within your control, rather than being shackled to a specific, often costly and unpredictable external solution. This is how we weaken irrational desires, not by fighting them, but by outsmarting them with clarity and self-awareness. The next time a powerful want emerges, greet it not with judgment but with curiosity. Have a conversation with it, ask it where it came from and what it truly hopes to achieve. You might be surprised by what you learn, and you will certainly find yourself feeling far more in charge of your own life. This brings us to a cornerstone of Stoic practice that directly counters the endless hunger of consumer culture, the profound art of cultivating contentment by discovering what enough truly means. At the heart of this is a radical shift in perspective, where we learn to derive happiness from appreciating what we already possess rather than from the exhausting pursuit of what we lack. Epictetus offered a brilliantly simple formula for this, stating, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Let that idea settle for a moment. Happiness, according to this view, is not something we acquire from the outside. It's a state we generate from the inside by managing and refining our desires. It depends far more on the scope of our wants than on the size of our possessions. A person with a vast fortune but endless, insatiable desires is poorer in spirit than someone with modest means who has learned the art of feeling satisfied. Now contrast this ancient wisdom with the modern consumer culture we're all immersed in. Our economy is fundamentally built on the engine of dissatisfaction. Advertising, social media, and the constant churn of new products are all meticulously designed to make us feel that what we have is not quite sufficient, that the current version of our phone is obsolete, that our wardrobe is missing the crucial item that will make us feel complete. This system doesn't just sell us products, it sells us a narrative of lack. It whispers that happiness is always one more purchase away, located in the next thing, the newer model, the better experience. The Stoic practice of contentment is a deliberate act of rebellion against this narrative. It's not about living in poverty or denying yourself pleasures. It's about making a conscious choice to define your own standard of enough, so you are no longer vulnerable to the manipulative message that you always need more. A powerful and tangible way to practice this is through our relationship with food. Consider the difference between a simple, home-cooked meal eaten with mindful attention and the experience of constantly craving gourmet, exotic, or expensive restaurant dishes. The gourmet craving is a desire that, by its very nature, is often outside our control. It requires specific ingredients, a chef's skill, and a significant financial outlay. It ties our potential enjoyment to a set of external conditions. The simple meal, however, is an opportunity to practice Stoic contentment. It's an exercise in finding deep pleasure in the basics, the warmth of the soup, the flavor of fresh bread, the nourishment it provides. When you consciously choose to appreciate the simple meal, you are not just eating, you are training your mind to extract maximum joy from what is readily available and within your control. You are proving to yourself that satisfaction is a skill you can develop, not a prize you must track down and purchase. The most direct method to build this skill is through a regular gratitude practice, a modern term for a very Stoic exercise. This isn't about vague, passive thankfulness. It's an active, disciplined rehearsal of appreciation for the things you already possess. The Stoics would often reflect on the temporary nature of all things, which naturally sparked a profound gratitude for their present existence. You can incorporate this into your daily routine with a simple habit. Each day, perhaps in the morning or before bed, bring to mind 3 specific things you already have that you genuinely value. The key is to move beyond the generic. Don't just say, "I'm grateful for my family." Get specific. "I am grateful for the 5 minutes of laughter I shared with my daughter today." Don't just say, "I'm grateful for my home." Get tangible. "I am grateful for the warmth of my bed on a cold morning." This practice actively rewires your brain's focus. It shifts your attention from what's missing to what's present, from what you desire to what you already own. It's a practical way to implement Epictetus's wisdom, systematically reducing your wants by fully appreciating the value of what you already have. In doing so, you build an inner fortress of contentment that no advertisement or social comparison can easily breach. This brings us to the most empowering shift in our entire journey, the act of consciously replacing shallow desires with deeper, more meaningful values. Up to this point, we've focused on pausing, examining, and understanding our impulses. But nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human mind. If we simply try to suppress a desire without offering the mind a more compelling alternative, we often end up in a state of lack or frustration. The Stoic solution is not to live a life of emptiness, but to actively redirect that powerful energy of desire toward pursuits that genuinely enrich our character and contribute to our sense of purpose. We aren't eliminating the engine of wanting, we are simply choosing a more fulfilling destination for it. Marcus Aurelius provided the perfect compass for this redirection. He advised us to ensure that our actions are always aligned with nature and reason, which for the Stoics meant living a life of virtue and contributing to the common good. He wrote, "Let your every action, word, and thought be that of one who might at any moment depart from life." This isn't a morbid thought, it's a clarifying one. It asks a piercing question. If this were my last day, would I want to spend my precious time and energy chasing a fleeting dopamine hit from a sale, or scrolling through endless comparison traps on social media? Or would I want to invest that same energy into something that leaves a lasting positive impact, that strengthens my character, or that deepens my understanding of the world? This alignment with our highest nature is the ultimate filter for our desires. Let's make this practical with a clear example. Imagine you feel the familiar pull toward passive entertainment, the desire to binge watch a television series for hours. There's nothing inherently wrong with relaxation, but the Stoic would invite you to first perform a quick audit. Ask yourself, is this desire serving my higher potential, or is it merely serving as an escape? If you find it's the latter, you don't have to cancel your plans and force yourself to read dense philosophy. Instead, you can practice a gentle redirection. Perhaps you decide to watch just one episode of that show, truly savoring it without guilt, and then redirect the time you saved toward a higher value desire, like listening to an informative podcast on a topic you're curious about, reading a chapter of a book that challenges you, or even calling a friend for a meaningful conversation. You are channeling the energy of wanting away from mere consumption and toward connection or growth. Consider another common modern desire, the want for external validation through social media engagement. The impulse to craft a perfect post and then constantly check for likes and comments is a powerful drain on our attention and peace. What higher value could replace this? Instead of desiring validation from others, you could cultivate a desire for self-validation through mastery. Redirect the time and mental energy spent on curating your online image into learning a new skill, playing a musical instrument, studying a language, practicing a craft. The desire is still there, it's still a powerful motivator, but its object has shifted from something outside your control, others' opinions, to something entirely within it, your own progress and competence. The satisfaction that comes from seeing your own improvement, from the silent confidence of knowing you can do something well, is infinitely more durable and fulfilling than the fleeting buzz of a notification. So I invite you to try this act of conscious replacement. Identify one common, low-value desire that frequently captures your attention. Maybe it's the urge to online shop when you're bored, or the reflex to gossip, or the habit of reaching for junk food when you're stressed. Now brainstorm a single higher value alternative that could fulfill a similar need but in a more meaningful way. If shopping is about the thrill of something new, could you redirect that energy into the desire to learn something new from a documentary or an article? If gossip is about feeling connected, could you replace it with the desire to have a genuine, positive check-in with someone you care about? The goal isn't perfection, it's gradual, conscious realignment. By repeatedly making these small choices, you are not suppressing your desires, you are educating them. You are training your mind to want what is truly good for you, to find its deepest satisfaction not in having more, but in being more. And in doing so, you build a life where your wants and your values are finally working in harmony, not at odds. All of these powerful techniques, cognitive distancing, negative visualization, examining our motives, they are not one-time fixes. They are more like skills in a craft, and like any skill, they require consistent, deliberate practice to master. This is where the crucial role of habit comes into play. The Stoics didn't believe that managing desire was a matter of sheer willpower or intellectual understanding alone. They saw it as a form of mental training, a discipline that had to be woven into the very fabric of daily life through repeated exercise. They called these practices ascesis, which is the root of our word ascetic, but it simply means training or exercise. Just as an athlete doesn't build muscle by reading about fitness, we don't build a disciplined mind by merely understanding philosophy. We build it through small, consistent, daily actions that gradually rewire our automatic responses. Think of your mind as a pathway through a field of tall grass. Every time you follow an impulsive desire, say, immediately buying something you see in an ad, you are walking down that same path, making the groove a little deeper and the habit a little stronger. The neural pathways in your brain become more entrenched, making that reaction faster and more automatic each time. The goal of Stoic habit training is to consciously and patiently start carving new pathways. You are the gardener of your own mind, deliberately choosing which paths to maintain and which to let grow over. This isn't about monumental acts of will. It's about the accumulation of tiny, almost imperceptible choices that, over time, change the entire landscape of your behavior. A profoundly effective way to begin this training is with the simple practice of intentionally delaying gratification. This is a small exercise with enormous implications. Pick something very simple and low stakes. Perhaps it's your morning coffee. Instead of making it the very first thing you do, commit to completing one small task beforehand: making your bed, reading a page of a book, or simply taking 5 deep breaths. Or perhaps it's the desire to check your email or social media first thing in the morning. Commit to leaving your phone on its charger for the first 15 minutes of your day and using that time for something intentional, like writing in a journal or planning your day. The object of the exercise isn't the task itself, it's the act of pausing. You are creating a small space between the impulse and the action, and in that space you are proving to yourself that you are in command. You are demonstrating that the urge does not own you. The beauty of starting with a manageable habit change is that it provides a concrete victory, a proof of concept for your own will. Each time you successfully delay a minor gratification, you are not just avoiding a coffee or a website, you are strengthening your mental muscle of self-command. You are building evidence for yourself that you can do this. This growing confidence then makes it easier to apply the same principle to larger, more challenging desires. The impulse to interrupt someone in a conversation can be met with a practiced pause. The urge to vent anger in an email can be held long enough to reconsider. The practice with the small things prepares you for the big things, so I encourage you to start today. Don't try to overhaul your entire life at once. Choose one tiny, specific desire that you encounter daily and make a pact with yourself to insert a brief, intentional delay before acting on it. This single, small act of training is how you begin the lifelong, rewarding work of cultivating a mind that serves you, rather than a mind you are constantly struggling to serve. This brings us to a principle that is central to Stoic training but often feels the most counterintuitive: the intentional and voluntary acceptance of discomfort. We've talked about pausing to examine our desires, but what about the actual physical and emotional unease that arises when we say no to a powerful craving? The Stoics didn't just advise us to endure this feeling, they actively encouraged us to seek it out in small, manageable doses. They believed that by voluntarily embracing minor hardships, we build an incredible resilience that makes us immune to the larger, involuntary hardships that life will inevitably throw our way. This practice is the ultimate test of our philosophy, moving it from the realm of thought into the arena of lived experience. The Roman statesman Cato the Younger was a legendary practitioner of this. He was known for his extreme and unyielding virtue, but that character wasn't built in a day. It was forged through countless small acts of self-denial. He would often walk through the streets of Rome in an outdated and threadbare toga, not because he couldn't afford a new one, but to practice being indifferent to public opinion. He would deliberately eat plain, simple food, even when more luxurious fare was available, to prove to himself that his happiness did not depend on gourmet flavors. He would force himself to walk long distances in bad weather, building his tolerance for physical discomfort. These weren't acts of masochism, they were exercises in freedom. Each time he chose a minor hardship, he was strengthening his mental muscle, reminding himself that his peace and his character were not contingent on perfect external conditions. He was vaccinating himself against fortune. Now, let's translate this ancient practice into our modern context. Think of the popular concept of a digital detox or a social media fast. This is a perfect example of a voluntary, modern Cotto-like exercise. You are not being forced to give up your phone. You are consciously choosing to experience the temporary discomfort of being disconnected. In those first few hours or days, you will likely feel that familiar itch of boredom, that anxiety of missing out, that restless urge to just check quickly. This feeling of unease is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It is the entire point of exercise. It is the feeling of your mind recalibrating, of breaking an addictive pattern. By willingly sitting with that discomfort instead of immediately soothing it, you are proving to yourself that you are stronger than your impulses. You are building evidence that you can handle feelings of boredom or loneliness without reaching for a digital pacifier. The same principle applies to any form of voluntary abstinence. Committing to a week without online shopping, a month without alcohol, or even just a day without complaining are all modern forms of Stoic ascesis. The goal is not to permanently deprive yourself of things you enjoy. The goal is to break the automatic, unconscious hold they have on you. It's to shatter the illusion that you need that thing to be okay. When you successfully complete a period of abstinence, you return to that activity with a newfound sense of choice and control. That glass of wine becomes a conscious pleasure you choose to savor, not a nightly habit you can't break. That online store becomes a place you visit with intention, not a reflex you turn to when you're feeling down. So here is a challenge, a practical way to put Cotto's wisdom into action this week. Identify one small, comfortable desire that you rely on daily. It doesn't have to be a major vice. Perhaps it's your afternoon sugary snack, the automatic purchase of a fancy coffee, or the habitual scrolling through a particular app before bed. Now, make a pact with yourself to abstain from it for a defined, manageable period: 24 hours, 48 hours, 1 week. Don't make it a silent, grumpy struggle. Announce it to yourself as a training exercise. When the urge arises and that feeling of lack or unease washes over you, greet it not as an enemy but as your training partner. That feeling is the resistance that will make you stronger. Acknowledge it by saying, "Ah, there it is. This is the feeling of building resilience. This temporary discomfort is the price of my long-term freedom." By normalizing this feeling and even learning to welcome it, you transform the entire experience from one of deprivation into one of empowerment. You are no longer a person denying themselves a pleasure. You are an athlete in the gym of the mind, lifting weights to build a strength that no external circumstance can ever take away. Now let's explore a powerful technique that brings together everything we've discussed so far, a practice that creates the mental space for true clarity to emerge. This is the art of judgment suspension. In our fast-paced world, we're conditioned to make instant decisions, to react immediately to every impulse and advertisement that crosses our path. The Stoics understood that this automatic response mechanism often leads us astray, causing us to pursue desires that don't truly serve our well-being. They advocated for a different approach, creating a deliberate pause between the initial impression and our final judgment about whether to act on it. This isn't about indecision. It's about wise decision-making that aligns with our deepest values rather than our momentary urges. Think of your mind as a courtroom where every desire stands trial. The initial impression, that sudden want for something, is like an emotional, persuasive lawyer making an impassioned opening statement. Judgment suspension is the act of the rational judge calling for a recess before rendering a verdict. You're not dismissing the case outright, but you're refusing to be rushed into a decision. Epictetus captured this beautifully when he advised, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, 'Hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent.' This moment of holding on is where your power lies." It's the gap between stimulus and response where true freedom resides. consider a practical scenario that most of us encounter regularly: the desire to make an impulse purchase. You're scrolling through your phone and see an advertisement for something that catches your eye, perhaps a new gadget, a piece of clothing, or a kitchen tool that promises to revolutionize your cooking. The initial impression is compelling. It looks shiny, useful, and the marketing copy tells you exactly why you need it right now. Without judgment suspension, the next automatic steps are clicking Add to Cart and completing the purchase. With judgment suspension, you create a simple rule: any non-essential purchase requires a 24-hour waiting period. During this time, you consciously withhold final judgment on whether you truly need or want this item. You're not saying no, you're simply saying not yet. This waiting period serves multiple Stoic purposes. First, it allows the initial emotional charge of the desire to dissipate. That urgent must-have now feeling almost always fades when given time. Second, it creates space for rational evaluation. You can ask yourself Stoic-informed questions. Does this purchase align with my core values? Is it something within my control that will genuinely contribute to my virtue or tranquility? Or is it seeking to fill an emotional void with an external object? Will owning this thing make me a better person, or is it merely a temporary distraction? Third, it practices the discipline of assent in a tangible way. You're actively choosing not to immediately agree with the impression that this purchase is necessary for your happiness. The beauty of this practice is that it works equally well for non-material desires. That impulse to send an angry email, to commit to a new project when you're already overwhelmed, or to indulge in a habit you're trying to change, all can benefit from this intentional pause. I encourage you to try this today with one specific desire that arises. When you feel that pull, instead of immediately acting or suppressing it, simply acknowledge it and give yourself permission to sit with it for 24 hours. Notice how the desire changes over time, how it might intensify initially, then gradually lose its urgency. Observe what rational thoughts emerge when the emotional charge diminishes. This isn't about denying yourself things you truly need. It's about developing the wisdom to distinguish between authentic needs and passing wants. Each time you practice this suspension of judgment, you're strengthening your ability to respond to life from a place of conscious choice rather than automatic reaction, moving ever closer to the Stoic ideal of a mind that serves you rather than one you must constantly struggle to manage. One of the most powerful ways to make these Stoic principles feel real and attainable is to give ourselves a concrete model to emulate. The Stoics themselves constantly referred to the ideal of the sage, a person of perfect wisdom and virtue who always chooses the rational path. While they acknowledged that becoming a perfect sage was likely impossible, they fiercely believed in the transformative power of having that ideal to strive toward. It gives us a North Star for our behavior, a template for what rational, virtuous action looks like in practice. We can borrow this technique by asking ourselves a simple but profound question in moments of temptation. What would the best version of me do in this situation? This isn't about comparing yourself to some unattainable superhero. It's about connecting with the most thoughtful, disciplined, and values-driven part of yourself that already exists. It's about giving that part of you a voice and a vote in the decision-making process. Let's make this practical by bringing in a historical example. Consider Seneca, a man who lived at the epicenter of power and temptation in ancient Rome. As an advisor to Emperor Nero, he was surrounded by unimaginable wealth, constant political intrigue, and every luxury imaginable. The temptations for corruption, greed, and self-indulgence were immense. Yet his writings reveal a man constantly wrestling with these desires, not to suppress them with a grim frown, but to examine them with calm curiosity. Imagine Seneca encountering a modern temptation, like the sudden urge to make a large, impulsive purchase on a credit card for something he doesn't truly need. We can be fairly certain he wouldn't react with sheer, grumpy willpower, gritting his teeth and walking away. Instead, he would pause. He would bring his immense capacity for rational examination to bear on the impulse. He might ask, does this purchase align with my stated values of simplicity and inner freedom? Is this desire for the object itself, or is it a desire to fill some other void, perhaps a need for status, a distraction from anxiety, or a fleeting hit of novelty? He would consider the long-term consequences, not just the immediate gratification. That shiny new object will eventually break, tarnish, or become obsolete, but the debt and the habit of impulsive spending will remain. He would likely conclude that the rational, virtuous action is to thank the desire for appearing acknowledging its presence, but then to politely decline its invitation, choosing instead to invest that money or time into something that builds lasting value, like his peace of mind or his knowledge. You can apply this same imaginative exercise to any desire you face. The next time you feel the pull to skip a workout, to indulge in gossip, or to procrastinate on an important task, press pause for just 10 seconds. Close your eyes and vividly picture the best, most integrated version of yourself. This isn't a judgmental, perfect critic. It's a calm, compassionate, and incredibly capable version of you who has your long-term well-being at heart. See this person standing in your exact situation, facing the exact same temptation. How do they carry themselves? What is their posture? What is the expression on their face? Most importantly, what action do they take? You'll often find that the answer comes with surprising clarity. This best self chooses the workout because they value health and discipline over momentary comfort. They step away from the gossip because they value integrity and connection over cheap social bonding. They open the document and start working because they value accomplishment and self-respect over the temporary escape of distraction. This practice of visualization does something remarkable. It externalizes the choice. It moves the decision from an internal battle between "I want to" and "I shouldn't" into a clearer choice between two different models of being. You are essentially asking, do I want to act from my impulsive, reactive self or from my thoughtful, purposeful self? Framing it this way makes the virtuous choice feel less like a deprivation and more like an alignment with who you truly aspire to be. Each time you choose to act as that best version would, you are not denying yourself. You are actively building that version into reality. You are voting with your actions for the person you are becoming, and over time, these small votes add up to a landslide victory for a more serene and self-directed life. This practice of inserting a deliberate pause is one of the most practical and immediately applicable tools in our Stoic toolkit for desire management. It builds directly on the cognitive distancing we discussed earlier, but makes it systematic and tangible. The core idea is disarmingly simple yet profoundly effective. Consciously create a gap between the initial spark of a desire and any action you might take. You are not trying to fight the impulse or suppress it. You are simply changing its timing. You are installing a speed bump on the mental highway between wanting and doing, a space where your rational faculty has a chance to catch up and offer its perspective. This tiny interval of time is where your freedom is actually won. Epictetus offered perhaps the most memorable advice on this. He told his students not to be hurried away by the vividness of the impression, but instead to say to the impulse, "Wait for me a little, impression. Let me see who you are and what you represent." Picture that for a moment. He is personifying the desire, treating it not as a command from your core self, but as a visitor knocking at the door of your mind. You have the absolute right to ask that visitor to state its business before you decide whether or not to let it in. This act of asking it to wait is the essence of not being hurried. It is the ultimate declaration that you are the gatekeeper, not the gate. Your impulses do not get an automatic green light. They must first yield to your conscious evaluation. Let's translate this into a modern rule you can implement today. We can call it the 10-minute pause rule. The next time you feel that sudden, compelling urge to make an unplanned purchase online, or to dive into a bag of chips when you're not physically hungry, or to send a reactive message when you're feeling irritated instead of immediately reaching for your wallet, the bag, or your phone, you make a pact with yourself. You commit to waiting just 10 minutes, set a timer if you need to. During those 10 minutes, you are not allowed to act on the desire. You are only allowed to observe it. This isn't a white-knuckle struggle of willpower. It's a strategic timeout. The rule isn't you can't have it. The rule is you can't have it right now. What happens in those 10 minutes is nothing short of magical. The initial, raw intensity of the wanting almost always begins to subside. The urgent, must-have-it-now feeling loses its steam because you have removed the fuel of immediate action. This creates the calm mental space for your rational mind, what the Stoics called your hegemonikon, your ruling faculty, to step in and ask the important questions. Is this purchase aligned with my financial goals and true needs, or is it just a reaction to clever marketing? Is this snack going to serve my body's health or just a fleeting emotional craving? Is this message I want to send fair, necessary, and kind, or is it just an expression of temporary frustration that I might regret? The pause gives you the clarity to tell the difference. The true power of this practice is revealed in what you discover after the 10 minutes are up. Very often, you'll find that the desire has simply evaporated. It was a momentary wave of emotion that needed to crash and recede on its own. In those cases, you've saved yourself money, calories, or social friction without any sense of deprivation. You just waited it out. Other times, the desire might still be there, but now it's a quiet preference rather than a raging demand. Now you can make a conscious choice from a place of calm evaluation rather than compulsive reaction. You might still choose to make the purchase or eat the snack, but now it's a deliberate decision you own, not an automatic behavior that owns you. This transforms the entire experience from one of being controlled to one of being in control. By implementing this simple pause rule, you are not building a wall against life's pleasures. You are building a gate, and you are putting yourself in charge of the key. This brings us to one of the most liberating and perhaps misunderstood concepts in Stoicism, a powerful tool for fundamentally reframing our relationship with desire, the idea of preferred indifference. This Stoic classification system is a master key for unlocking a profound shift in perspective, allowing us to pursue things without becoming emotionally enslaved to them. The core idea, articulated beautifully by Marcus Aurelius, is that most of the things we desperately chase are in themselves neither good nor bad. Their moral value is neutral. What gives them weight is only our judgment of them. He wrote, "Take away your opinion about it, and the claim that I've been harmed is taken away." Take away the claim that you've been harmed, and the harm itself is taken away. The event or object itself is inert. It is our charged opinion about it, our belief that it is essential for our happiness, that creates the potential for suffering. So what does it mean for something to be a preferred indifferent? Let's break down this seemingly contradictory term. An indifferent is something that has no inherent power to make you a good or virtuous person. It cannot improve your character, your wisdom, your justice, or your courage. These are the only things the Stoics considered truly good. Everything else, your health, your wealth, your reputation, your possessions, falls into the category of indifference. Now, this doesn't mean we shouldn't care about them at all. That's where the preferred part comes in. It is perfectly natural and rational to prefer health over sickness, wealth over poverty, comfort over hardship. The Stoic isn't a masochist seeking out pain. The crucial difference is that the Stoic pursues these preferred things while holding the understanding that they are not essential for a good and flourishing life. Their presence is preferred, but their absence is not a catastrophe. Your virtue and your capacity for happiness remain intact regardless. Let's apply this to a powerful modern desire, wanting a luxury car. In our conventional way of thinking, this car is often loaded with meaning. We see it as a good thing that will bring us status, admiration, pleasure, and a sense of success. This belief makes the desire for it incredibly intense and emotionally charged. Not getting it feels like a personal failure or a real loss. The Stoic Reframing asks us to strip the car of this moral weight. The car itself is neither good nor bad. It is a preferred indifferent. It is perfectly reasonable to prefer it over a less reliable or less comfortable vehicle. You can work hard, save your money, and buy it, but you do so with a completely different internal mindset. You enjoy the smooth ride and the feeling of accomplishment, but you hold the awareness that this object has no power to actually make you a better or happier person. Your worth was not increased by its purchase, and it would not be decreased if it were suddenly wrecked. The car is a tool for transportation, perhaps a source of temporary pleasure, but it is not a component of your character. It is preferred, but it is indifferent. This reframing is like a psychological superpower. It allows you to engage with the world of things and achievements without handing them the remote control to your emotional state. You can want them, work for them, and even enjoy them, but you do so with a light touch because you have mentally already accepted their potential loss. This is how you reduce the emotional charge around a want, by draining it of the false significance you've assigned to it. The desire for the car shifts from a desperate need that will define you to a simple preference that you can take or leave. This doesn't make life bland, it makes it stable. The highs of getting what you want may be less euphoric, but the lows of not getting it are far less devastating. You trade the roller coaster for steady, sustainable progress. I want you to try this cognitive reframing right now with a desire of your own. Bring to mind something you've been wanting, a promotion, a vacation, a new piece of technology, or even a specific outcome in a relationship. Now consciously apply the Stoic label. Say to yourself, this thing I want is a preferred indifferent. It is not good or bad in itself. My virtue and my capacity for a good life do not depend on it. I can prefer it, I can work toward it, but I release the idea that I need it to be happy. Feel how that shifts the emotional weight. The desire might still be there, but it likely feels less urgent, less fraught with anxiety. It becomes one option among many in a life that is already complete. This is the essence of Stoic desire management, not to eradicate want, but to see our wants for what they truly are, simple preferences in a vast and neutral universe, rather than the essential keys to our happiness. This brings us to a crucial distinction that lies at the very heart of Stoic practice, one that helps us sort our desires into two very different categories. The early Stoics, starting with Zeno, placed immense importance on the idea of living in accordance with nature. This wasn't about moving to the woods and foraging for berries. It was about aligning our desires and actions with our highest, most rational human nature. A key part of this was learning to differentiate between desires that are natural and those that are unnatural or based on empty opinion. Natural desires are those rooted in our basic biological and rational needs, things essential for our survival and flourishing as human beings. Think of the genuine need for nutritious food, for clean water, for adequate shelter, for meaningful social connection. and for the pursuit of knowledge. These desires have a natural limit. You can only eat so much wholesome food before you are full. You can only drink so much water before your thirst is quenched. Unnatural desires, by contrast, are inventions of our misguided judgments and social conditioning. They are often limitless, agitated, and focused on things that do not truly contribute to our well-being. The desire for excessive wealth far beyond what is needed for security, the craving for fame and constant admiration, the obsession with luxury foods that are more about status than sustenance, these are all unnatural. They are like weeds that grow from the soil of our natural needs but twist them into something distorted. A natural desire for food becomes an unnatural craving for a specific, expensive gourmet meal that we believe will make us happy. A natural desire for comfort and security morphs into an insatiable want for a mansion and a fleet of sports cars. The Stoic goal is not to eliminate the natural desires but to fulfill them wisely, while systematically weeding out the unnatural ones that create so much of our inner turmoil. Let's make this practical with a clear, everyday example. Consider the simple act of eating. Your body has a natural, biological need for nourishment. This is a healthy, natural desire. You feel hunger and you seek out food to satisfy that need. Now, imagine you've just finished a balanced, satisfying meal. You are no longer physically hungry. Then you see a commercial for a rich, sugary dessert, or you walk past a bakery. A new desire sparks, a craving for that specific slice of cake. This is not a natural desire born of a bodily need. Your need for calories has already been met. This is an unnatural desire fueled by visual temptation, perhaps boredom, or a learned habit of ending a meal with something sweet. It's a want that is unmoored from a genuine requirement. The Stoic practice here is to pause and ask a simple but powerful question. Is this desire natural or unnatural? Is it serving a real need of my body, or is it serving a passing fancy of my mind? This act of evaluation is how we begin to retrain our perceptions. Zeno and the early Stoics would argue that the unnatural desire for that cake is based on a value judgment. We have assigned an excessive amount of value to the pleasure we believe the cake will bring. We have mistakenly decided that this momentary sensory experience is a genuine good, necessary for our happiness. By learning to see it for what it is, a preferred indifferent that we can enjoy if it's available but certainly do not need, we drain it of its compulsive power. We can then make a free choice. We might still choose to have a small piece, savoring it consciously as an occasional pleasure, but we do so without the frantic urgency of a craving. Or we might choose to pass, recognizing that the desire was fleeting and not aligned with our broader goal of health and self-command. The freedom lies in the ability to choose, rather than being helplessly dragged along by the impulse. I encourage you to try this evaluation today. Throughout your day, as desires arise, whether it's the urge to buy something, to check your phone, or to indulge in a habit, pause and gently interrogate them. Ask yourself, is this desire natural? Does it serve a fundamental human need for survival, connection, or growth? Or is it unnatural, a learned want that promises happiness it cannot truly deliver? This isn't about labeling desires as morally good or bad. It's about understanding their origin and their effect on your tranquility. By consistently practicing this discernment, you start to clear away the mental clutter of countless unnatural wants, making space for a life that is simpler, more focused, and far more aligned with your true nature. You begin to want what you actually need and need less of what you merely want. Now let's turn to a practice that might sound challenging, but is incredibly effective for proving to yourself just how much freedom you can wield over your desires. This is the art of practicing voluntary discomfort. At first glance, it seems counterintuitive. Why would anyone choose to be uncomfortable on purpose? The Stoic answer is simple yet profound: to build immunity. Seneca, in his letters, passionately advocated for this. He advised his friend Lucilius to set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" He wasn't promoting a life of constant austerity. He was prescribing a vaccine, a small, controlled dose of hardship to inoculate yourself against the fear of ever experiencing it involuntarily. This practice is the ultimate test of your philosophy, moving it from the realm of thought into the tangible world of lived experience. Think of it like this: if you've never gone without a meal, the mere thought of being hungry can trigger anxiety. That anxiety, in turn, can make you overly attached to food, leading to overeating or being ruled by cravings. But if you have voluntarily experienced hunger and discovered that you are perfectly capable of handling it, that it is merely a sensation and not an emergency, you break its power over you. You realize that your well-being is not dependent on constant comfort. This is the core of the exercise. By willingly embracing a minor hardship, you are not punishing yourself. You are demonstrating to yourself, through direct experience, that you are stronger than your circumstances. You are building concrete evidence that your peace and your character remain intact even when external conditions are less than ideal. So what does this look like in practical, modern terms? It's about finding small, manageable ways to step outside your comfort zone to prove your self-command. It could be as simple as taking a cold shower instead of a hot one. That initial shock of cold water is a powerful, immediate sensation. The instinct is to recoil, to immediately turn the knob back to hot. But if you stay with it for just 30 seconds, breathing through the discomfort, you accomplish something significant. You have just overruled an automatic desire for comfort with a conscious act of will. You have shown your body that you, not its reflexes, are in charge. Another example is choosing to skip a meal intentionally, not out of neglect but as a deliberate practice. When the usual lunchtime hunger pangs arrive, instead of immediately satisfying them, you sit with the feeling. You observe it. You discover that the sensation of hunger is temporary. It waxes and wanes, and it does not prevent you from thinking clearly or working productively. This dismantles the belief that you must immediately gratify every physical urge. The goal is never to cause yourself harm or to adopt a life of misery. The goal is to break the chain of automaticity that links a feeling of lack to an immediate, often mindless, action. It's about transforming your relationship with discomfort from one of fear and avoidance to one of familiarity and even confidence. Each time you successfully complete a small act of voluntary discomfort, you are depositing confidence into your psychological bank account. You are building a reserve of resilience that you can draw upon when life inevitably throws an involuntary hardship your way, a financial setback, a minor illness, a stressful period at work. Because you have already proven to yourself that you can handle discomfort, these events lose their power to shatter your peace. I encourage you to try this for yourself this week. Choose one small, voluntary discomfort to practice. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Perhaps it's walking somewhere instead of driving, even if the weather isn't perfect. Maybe it's turning off the entertainment and sitting in quiet for 15 minutes instead of immediately filling the silence. It could be choosing a simple meal of basic ingredients over something more elaborate. Announce your intention to yourself clearly. This is my Stoic exercise for today. When the discomfort arises, greet it not as an enemy, but as your training partner. That feeling of unease is the resistance that will make you stronger. Acknowledge it by saying, "This is the feeling of building freedom." By normalizing this sensation and learning to move through it with calm awareness, you achieve something remarkable. You move from being a person who is constantly managing desires to a person who is authentically and unshakably free. And this profound shift in perspective brings us to perhaps the most graceful of all Stoic arts, the gentle release of attachment. After all the examining, the pausing, and the questioning, we arrive at a point of letting go, not through grim force or white-knuckled suppression, but through a clear-eyed understanding of what truly serves us. Epictetus offered a beautifully simple definition of happiness that cuts to the heart of this. He said, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control, and some things are not." He then immediately follows this by stating that the person who understands this will never be hindered or harmed, because they will blame no one and desire nothing outside their own power. In other words, happiness is the freedom that comes from no longer craving what isn't yours to command. This isn't a call to become passive or to stop caring about outcomes. It's an invitation to change the quality of your care. It's the difference between holding something with an open palm and clutching it in a white-knuckled fist. When you hold a small bird in your open hand, you can appreciate its presence, its beauty, its life. But if you close your fist tightly around it, desperate not to lose it, you will inevitably harm it. The art of letting go gently is about learning to keep your hand open. You can still prefer the bird to stay. You can create a welcoming environment for it. But your peace is not shattered if it chooses to fly away because you never believed you truly owned its flight. This is how we can approach our desires, not as vital necessities we must possess, but as preferences we can welcome and release with equal grace. Consider the powerful example of not getting a job you deeply desired. You prepared meticulously, aced the interviews, and felt a strong connection to the role. The desire for it feels all-consuming. You've already imagined your life with this new title, this new salary, this new sense of purpose. When the rejection email arrives, the natural reaction is a crashing wave of disappointment, perhaps even bitterness or a feeling of personal inadequacy. This suffering stems directly from the attachment, the tight fist you had around that specific outcome. The Stoic art of letting go begins by applying the tools we've discussed. You first pause and apply the dichotomy of control, your preparation, your interview performance, your enthusiasm. These were within your control. The final decision, the other candidates, the company's internal needs, these were not. You then examine the impression of loss. Does not getting this job actually damage your character, your virtue, or your capacity for meaningful work? Or does it merely disappoint a preference? The gentle release comes from consciously shifting your focus from what you didn't get to what you still have and what you can now choose. You can release the attachment to that specific path and open yourself to the possibilities that this closed door now creates. Perhaps a better suited role is ahead, one you couldn't see while you were fixated on this one. Perhaps this experience revealed a skill you need to develop further. The attachment was to a single, narrow story of how your future should unfold. Letting go is about returning to the author's seat of your own life, ready to write the next chapter with the materials actually available to you, rather than mourning the plot twist you didn't expect. It's accepting that the universe is under no obligation to comply with your plans and finding a deeper, more resilient peace in that very acceptance. So I invite you to try this gentle release with something in your own life right now. It doesn't have to be a monumental loss. Think of a current, smaller desire that holds a bit too much sway over your mood. Perhaps it's the desire for a friend to apologize for a minor slight, or the wish for the weather to be sunny for your day off, or the hope that a particular project will receive unanimous praise. Notice how holding onto these specific outcomes creates a subtle tension, a conditional state where your happiness is waiting for external permission to arrive. Now see if you can consciously loosen your grip. You can still prefer the apology, the sunshine, or the praise, but practice holding those preferences lightly. Acknowledge that these outcomes are not within your direct control and that your core tranquility does not require them. Imagine setting that specific want down on the shore and watching it float away like a leaf on a stream. You are not abandoning your goals, you are simply reclaiming your peace from their conditional fulfillment. This act of gentle release is the ultimate practice of freedom, a daily returning to the unshakable understanding that you are already whole, and no external event can add to or subtract from that fundamental truth. But how do we actually perform this act of gentle release? How do we move from intellectually understanding that we're too attached to something to genuinely feeling that knot of desire loosen its grip? The Stoics offer us a remarkably practical and powerful tool for this, one that engages our highest human faculty, our capacity for reason. They believed that logic wasn't just for abstract debates. It was a therapeutic instrument, a form of mental surgery we could perform on our own irrational desires to carefully dissect them and reveal their emptiness. The goal is to use the cold, clear light of rational analysis to see our wants for what they truly are, often discovering that beneath the shiny surface, there's very little substance there at all. This process begins with taking a specific, powerful desire and subjecting it to a rigorous cross-examination. Let's use the classic example the Stoics loved to analyze, the desire for fame or widespread recognition. On the surface, this want feels incredibly compelling. We imagine the admiration, the respect, the sense of importance that comes with being known. But a Stoic would take this desire and break it down with logical precision. First, they would ask, what is fame, really? It's simply the opinions of a large number of other people. And as we've established, the opinions of others are firmly in the category of things outside our control. So, by desiring fame, we are essentially handing over our happiness to the most fickle and unpredictable force imaginable, public opinion. Today's hero is tomorrow's villain in the court of public perception. Next, they would analyze the consequences. Does fame truly bring the happiness it promises? Often, it brings the opposite, a loss of privacy, constant scrutiny, anxiety about maintaining your status, and the pressure of living up to an image. They would point out that seeking validation from thousands of strangers is a bottomless pit. The more you get, the more you seem to need, creating a cycle of dependency rather than fulfillment. Finally, they would compare it to a higher good. Is the time and energy spent chasing external recognition better invested in building a character worthy of your own self-respect? This logical deconstruction doesn't necessarily erase the initial attraction to fame, but it strips away its illusion of importance. It becomes exposed as a preference that is not only outside your control, but also likely to bring more trouble than tranquility. The desire, when held up to the light of reason, begins to seem silly, fragile, and not at all worth the mental energy we devote to it. This technique is something you can apply to any persistent desire that's causing you agitation. The key is to move it from the emotional realm into the analytical realm. I want you to try this right now. Bring to mind one specific desire that has been occupying your thoughts lately. It could be the desire for a particular possession, for a specific outcome at work, or for a change in another person's behavior toward you. Now, take out a piece of paper or open a notes app and give this desire a rational critique as if you were a Stoic philosopher. Write down answers to these questions. What is the true nature of the thing I want? Is its attainment within my complete control? What are the potential hidden costs or negative consequences of getting it? What false belief or story am I telling myself about why I need this to be happy? Is this desire aligned with my deepest values, or is it in conflict with them? What would a truly wise person say about this particular want? The act of writing is crucial here. It forces you to slow down your thinking and articulate the logic, or often the lack thereof, behind the craving. You might start your sentence with, "I desire this because," and then immediately challenge that reason. You'll likely find that the initial justification crumbles under rational scrutiny. This isn't about beating yourself up for wanting something. It's about bringing compassionate curiosity to the mechanics of your own mind. By repeatedly practicing this rational dissection, you train your mind to automatically apply a filter of logic to incoming impulses. You start to see the hollow promises behind the flashy packaging of many desires, and in that clarity, you find the power to simply let them go, not with a struggle but with a shrug of understanding. You realize you've been chasing a mirage, and the moment you see it clearly, you are free to stop running and appreciate the oasis that has been within you all along. This brings us to a final, transformative shift in perspective that ties all of these practices together. The art of finding profound satisfaction not in the fulfillment of future desires, but in the rich experience of the present moment. This is about discovering that the feeling of enough isn't a distant destination we arrive at after acquiring something. It's a state of attention we can cultivate right now with the materials already in our hands. Marcus Aurelius, in his private meditations, constantly redirected his own focus to this truth. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," and advised himself to concentrate on the specific task immediately before him, to do it with meticulous care and with the whole of his humanity. He wasn't urging a narrow life but a deep one, arguing that a life well lived is simply a long series of well-lived moments, each one attended to fully. Think about the common experience of going for a walk. Often, we're not really walking, we're using our body to transport a mind that is entirely elsewhere. We might be mentally rehearsing a future conversation, rehashing a past argument, or scrolling through a mental checklist of desires and worries. The walk itself becomes a means to an end, a blank space between more important things. We might even find ourselves wishing for it to be over so we can get on with the next item on our list. This is desire in its most subtle form, a rejection of the current moment in favor of an imagined future one. The Stoic alternative is to bring your entire awareness to the walk itself, to feel the rhythm of your breath, the solidity of the ground under your feet, the play of light through the leaves, the sensation of the air on your skin. When you do this, the walk is no longer a blank space. It becomes a vivid, fulfilling experience in its own right. The desire for it to end dissolves because you are no longer waiting for your life to start somewhere else. You are already living it completely. This practice of deep presence is the ultimate antidote to the restless itch of desire, because desire can only exist in the future. It is always oriented toward what comes next, what we might get, what we hope will happen. By pulling our attention firmly into the sensory reality of the now, we effectively pull the plug on the engine of wanting. We aren't suppressing the desire. We are simply too engaged with what is actually happening to be bothered by what isn't. The Roman philosopher Seneca touched on this when he warned that we are often amidst things that are ours, yet not our own, meaning we are physically present in our lives but mentally absent, lost in longing for what we lack. To reclaim that mental presence is to reclaim our lives from the tyranny of perpetual wanting. I want you to try a simple but powerful exercise right where you are. You don't need to change anything about your external circumstances. Just pause for a moment and bring your attention to your immediate reality. Now, find 3 specific things in your current experience that you can genuinely appreciate. The key is to be incredibly specific and sensory. Don't just say, "I appreciate my desk." Look closer. Notice the smooth, cool surface of the wood under your fingertips. Don't just say, "I appreciate the quiet." Listen. Appreciate the specific hum of your computer or the faint, distant sound of a bird outside. Perhaps you can appreciate the warmth of the sweater you're wearing, or the way the light is falling across the room in a particular pattern, or even the simple, reliable fact that your body is breathing without any conscious effort from you. This isn't a vague exercise in positive thinking. It's a deliberate act of attention that grounds you firmly in the reality of what you already have, severing the mental projection into a future defined by what you don't. Each time you do this, you are proving to yourself that fulfillment is not a conditional state. It is a mode of perception available to you at any time you choose to access it, simply by deciding to be fully where you already are. And this brings us to one of the most powerful insights the Stoics offer for understanding why desire can feel so insatiable. They expose what we might call the illusion of permanent satisfaction. It's the belief that if we can just acquire this one thing, achieve that one goal, then we will finally arrive at a state of lasting contentment. The Roman Stoic Seneca, who witnessed boundless greed at the highest levels of power, saw through this completely. He observed that the pursuit of wealth and possessions is a lot like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. He wrote, "For greed, all nature is too little." Think about the profound truth in that single line. It's not that the world lacks things to want, it's that the mindset of greed is a bottomless pit. It's a psychological state that, by its very nature, can never be satisfied because it mistakes an internal condition for an external solution. The wanting itself is the problem, not the objects being wanted. We see this cycle play out constantly in our modern world, perhaps nowhere more clearly than in our relationship with technology. Consider the common experience of upgrading a smartphone. You've had your current model for a couple of years. It works perfectly fine. It makes calls, sends messages, accesses the internet, but then a new model is released. It has a slightly better camera, a marginally faster processor, a new feature you've never felt the lack of until this moment. The desire ignites. You imagine the crispness of the new photos, the smoothness of the interface. You finally purchase it, and for a day or two, there's a thrill. The newness is exciting, but remarkably quickly, often within a week, that feeling fades. The new phone simply becomes your phone. It's no longer a source of joy, it's just a tool. And soon enough, your attention is captured by the next iteration, the next upgrade, the next promise of a satisfaction that never quite lasts. The cycle begins anew. The object changed, but the underlying restlessness of the mind did not. This isn't to say we should never upgrade our gadgets or strive for nicer things. The Stoic point is to recognize this cycle for what it is, a cycle, not a path. Each fulfilled desire creates a temporary peak of pleasure, followed by a return to a baseline level of contentment, and then the emergence of a new desire. The fulfillment is always, by its very nature, temporary. The thrill of acquisition is a fleeting neurological event, not a permanent state of being. The mistake is in believing that the next acquisition will be the one that finally sticks, that the next peak will be the plateau, but it never is. The plateau is only ever found in the space between the wants, in the quiet acceptance of what is already here. I want you to take a moment to reflect on your own experience with this. Can you recall a time you worked intensely toward a goal, convinced that achieving it would bring you lasting happiness? Perhaps it was saving for a particular car, landing a specific job, or even planning a dream vacation. Remember the anticipation, the belief that this was the key. Now recall the moment of achievement. There was likely a genuine surge of pleasure and pride. but then trace what happened after. How long did that feeling last before your mind, almost automatically, began scanning the horizon for the next goal, the next object of desire? That moment of transition where satisfaction gives way to a new restlessness is the entire game. It's not a personal failing. It's the normal functioning of an untrained mind that believes happiness is out there in the next thing. By simply becoming aware of this pattern, you begin to break its spell. You can still enjoy the pursuit and the achievement, but you do so with the wisdom that it is a passing experience, not a final destination. This awareness allows you to enjoy the wave of pleasure without expecting it to permanently lift you onto a new shore. And that very expectation is what sets you free from the exhausting cycle of endless wanting. Think of the simple, powerful act of saying no not as a moment of deprivation, but as a profound act of strength training for your mind. Every time you consciously deny an impulse that doesn't serve your higher goals, you are not missing out, you are building up. You are performing a single mental rep that fortifies your willpower, increasing your capacity for resilience and self-command. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus, who was deeply concerned with the practical application of philosophy, placed immense value on this kind of endurance training. He taught that comfort and excessive ease are actually enemies of the soul, while hardship and difficulty, when voluntarily embraced, are its greatest allies. He famously said that we should practice enduring hardship willingly, so that we may become strong enough to endure it unwillingly when fortune demands it. In other words, we voluntarily lift weights in the gym of the mind, so that we can easily carry the heavier, unexpected weights life might hand us later. A perfect, everyday example of this is the decision to refuse an extra portion of dessert when you're already comfortably full. The initial desire is powerful and persuasive. It promises a fleeting moment of sugary pleasure. The act of saying no in that moment creates a small but significant internal friction. It feels uncomfortable. That feeling of discomfort is not a sign that you're failing. It is the exact sensation of your mental muscle working. It is the resistance that makes you stronger. By choosing to sit with that minor unease instead of immediately soothing it with the cake, you are proving to yourself in a tangible way that you are more powerful than your impulses. You are demonstrating that a temporary sensory pleasure does not have veto power over your reasoned decisions. This small victory isn't about the dessert at all. It's about the silent, internal confirmation that you are in charge. This is why it is so crucial to consciously celebrate these small victories in denial. We often brush past them, focusing only on the times we fail and give in. But each successful act of restraint is a brick in the foundation of your inner citadel. When you walk away from that dessert, take a literal second to acknowledge the win. Give yourself a silent nod of respect. You could even make a mental note. I wanted it, I observed the desire, and I chose my long-term goal over a momentary want. That is strength. This positive reinforcement wires your brain to associate the act of saying no with a feeling of accomplishment and pride, rather than just a feeling of lack. Over time, this reframes the entire experience. Denial ceases to be a negative act of restriction and transforms into a positive act of self-affirmation. You are not saying no to the cake. You are saying yes to your own discipline, your health, and your sovereignty over your own choices. Each celebration, no matter how small, turns the practice of restraint from a grim chore into a rewarding game of building a stronger, more resilient you. Now, let's turn our attention outward to a powerful force that actively shapes and often inflames our desires, the social world around us. For all our focus on internal discipline, we don't live in a vacuum. Our minds are constantly being bombarded with messages, both subtle and overt, about what we should want, What will make us acceptable, successful, and happy in the eyes of others? This isn't a modern invention. The Stoics were acutely aware of this pressure 2,000 years ago. They recognized that a huge portion of our suffering comes not from our own natural needs, but from adopting the desires and values of the crowd without ever stopping to question if they are truly our own. We are social creatures hardwired for connection and belonging, and this very wiring can be hijacked to make us want things that have nothing to do with our authentic selves and everything to do with gaining approval or avoiding social exclusion. Epictetus, who spoke so directly about the distinction between what is and isn't ours to control, had characteristically blunt advice for dealing with the opinions of others. He said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.' This is more than just a witty retort. It's a profound mental strategy for disarmament." Epictetus is essentially advising us to completely devalue the currency of other people's opinions. If someone's criticism or praise is based on a superficial understanding of you or on their own flawed set of values, why would you grant it the power to dictate your happiness or your desires? By making a joke of it, or at least by internally dismissing its importance, you are practicing the ultimate form of indifference toward external judgment. You are declaring that your self-worth is not up for a public vote. Consider the powerful engine of social media, a modern-day amplifier of this ancient problem. The entire ecosystem is designed to create and perpetuate desires based on social validation. You see an influencer on a luxurious vacation, a friend with a seemingly perfect home, a colleague celebrating a professional achievement. The immediate, often unconscious impression is a comparative one. They have that, their life looks good, therefore I should want that too to feel good about myself. This isn't a natural desire arising from within. It's a socially conditioned one, implanted through comparison. The desire isn't for the vacation itself, but for the perceived status, admiration, and sense of belonging that the vacation represents. We start wanting things not for their inherent utility or joy, but for their symbolic value in the social marketplace. This is how a perfectly functional wardrobe can suddenly feel inadequate because a new, must-have trend emerges, or how a reliable car can begin to feel like an embarrassment because it doesn't match the neighborhood standard. This external shaping of desire is incredibly potent because it taps into deep-seated fears of being left out, judged, or deemed unsuccessful by our tribe. The pressure to keep up, to have the right brand, to be seen at the right places, to hold the right opinions, this is the water we swim in, and it takes conscious effort even to notice it. The Stoic practice here is to become a sociologist of your own wants. To regularly audit your desires and ask a crucial question: is this something I truly value, or is this something I have been taught to value by my culture, my advertising, my peers, or my social media feed? The goal isn't to rebel against all trends or live in opposition to society. It's to ensure that your choices are conscious and aligned with your own reasoned values, not unconscious reflexes driven by a fear of social judgment. I want you to try a brief but powerful exercise in this moment. Cast your mind over your current desires, big or small. It could be the want for a particular item of clothing, a new piece of tech, a different car, or even a lifestyle goal like living in a certain neighborhood. Now, see if you can identify just one of those wants that feels heavily influenced by the people around you or the culture you consume. Be brutally honest with yourself. Did this desire originate from a genuine personal need or passion? Or did it emerge after you saw someone else have it and receive approval for it? Just the act of naming this influence, of dragging it out of the shadows of your subconscious and into the light of your awareness, begins to loosen its grip. You are not your desire for that trendy sneaker. You are the awareness that is noticing the social pressure to want it. And in that simple act of noticing, you reclaim your power to choose. You can still buy the sneakers if you decide you genuinely like them, but now you do it as a free person making a choice, not as a puppet reacting to invisible strings. This is how we build a firewall between our inner peace and the relentless social currents that constantly try to tell us what we should want to be happy. This profound shift in perspective, from chasing endless wants to cultivating a quiet appreciation for what is already present, brings us to a powerful and practical convergence of ancient wisdom and modern practice, the freedom found in minimalism. At its core, Stoicism and minimalism are not just compatible, they are two sides of the same coin, both aiming for the same destination, a life of purpose, clarity, and liberation from the tyranny of excess. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, a man of immense wealth who understood its perils better than most, put it with startling clarity. He wrote, "Riches have enslaved mankind." Think about the weight of that statement. It's not that money itself is evil. It's that the pursuit and maintenance of it, the constant anxiety of getting more, and the fear of losing what we have, creates a form of psychological servitude. We begin to serve our possessions, our lifestyle, and our reputation rather than having them serve us. We trade our time, our energy, and our attention, our most precious, non-renewable resources, for the upkeep of a vast collection of things we often don't need and barely even notice. Minimalism, in the Stoic sense, is the active practice of reversing this enslavement. It is the physical and mental decluttering that creates space for what truly matters. It's not about living in an empty white room with one chair. It's about conducting a ruthless audit of your life and asking, for every object, commitment, and even thought, does this thing serve my peace? Does it contribute to my virtue, or is it merely a drain on my attention, a source of maintenance anxiety, a relic of a desire I no longer hold? When you start to apply this filter, you begin to see your possessions not as neutral objects, but as claimants on your freedom. Each item you own requires a tiny piece of your mind. You have to clean it, organize it, insure it, repair it, or even just look at it and decide whether to keep it. This is the hidden cost of clutter that Seneca so keenly identified. The more you own, the more your mind is pulled outward, fragmented by the sheer volume of things it feels responsible for managing. Consider the simple, transformative act of decluttering a closet. You open the doors and are faced not just with clothes, but with a physical manifestation of past desires, mistaken identities, and impulsive purchases. That shirt you bought because it was on sale, not because you loved it. The dress you keep hoping you'll fit into again someday. The gadget that promised to organize your life but now just takes up shelf space. Each of these items carries a subtle psychological weight. It represents a small, unmet expectation, a minor failure, or a want that was fulfilled but brought no lasting satisfaction. The process of removing them, of thanking them for their service and letting them go, is not an act of deprivation. It is a profound act of liberation. With each bag you donate, you are not losing something. You are lightening your load. You are reclaiming the mental energy that was tied up in those objects and returning it to yourself. You are proving to yourself in a tangible way that your happiness and your identity are not located in your belongings. This is Stoicism in action, using reason to distinguish between what is essential and what is superfluous, and then having the courage to act on that distinction. I want to invite you to try a small experiment this week. one that directly applies this fusion of Stoic thought and minimalist action. Look around the room you are in right now, either physically or in your mind's eye. Identify just one object that you have been holding onto out of obligation, guilt, or a vague sense of someday, rather than genuine love or utility. It could be a book you know you'll never read, a knick-knack that collects dust, and piece of clothing that no longer fits your life. Now make a conscious decision to remove it. Donate it, recycle it, or gift it to someone who might truly need it. As you do, pay close attention to the feeling that arises. You might feel a brief pang of hesitation, a voice that whispers, "But what if I need it?" That voice is the echo of the very enslavement Seneca described. Gently acknowledge it and then proceed. Notice the sense of lightness, of space, both physically and mentally, that follows the action. That feeling is freedom. It is the direct experience of wanting less, and in that wanting less, discovering that you already have more than enough. This is how we build a life, not by constant addition, but by thoughtful subtraction, creating room not for more things, but for more life. Now that we've explored the power of examining and releasing our attachments, let's pivot to the most empowering and practical step of all: consciously redirecting the energy we once spent on uncontrollable desires toward the things we can actually influence. This is where Stoic philosophy transforms from a theoretical framework into a dynamic engine for daily living. Remember the bedrock principle we discussed earlier, the dichotomy of control. This is where we put it into high gear. Epictetus's profound insight wasn't meant to be a passive observation. It was a call to action, a strategic reallocation of our most precious resource, our effort and attention. Think of your mental and emotional energy as a finite budget. Every day you have a certain amount to spend. Most of us, without even realizing it, are pouring vast sums of this budget into investments that yield zero return. We worry about traffic, we agonize over a stranger's opinion online, we fret about market fluctuations. We desperately desire a specific outcome in a situation involving other people's choices. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. The Stoic invitation is to become a shrewd investor of your energy, to audit your spending and ask for every single desire or worry, is this within my control? If the answer is no, that is not a signal to despair, it's a signal to divest, to immediately withdraw your attention and capital from that losing venture and reinvest it into an area where you are the sole shareholder. Let's apply this directly to the realm of desire with a concrete example. Imagine you have a strong desire for a romantic partner to act a certain way. You want them to be more affectionate, more communicative, or to share a particular interest. According to the dichotomy, their feelings, their actions, and their preferences are firmly outside your control. You can influence them through your own kindness and communication, but you cannot command them. Pouring your energy into the desire to change them is a guaranteed path to frustration and resentment. So, where can you redirect that energy? Look inward. Your own attitude, your effort to communicate your needs clearly and compassionately, your boundaries, your capacity for patience, and your decision to engage in activities that fulfill you independently of the relationship, these are all 100% within your control. By shifting your focus from trying to control another person to mastering your own responses and actions, you accomplish two things. You reclaim a massive amount of wasted energy, and you often become a more attractive, grounded partner, which ironically makes the outcome you originally desired more likely, though you are no longer attached to it. This principle applies universally. Consider the desire for career advancement. You cannot control whether your manager gives you a promotion. That decision rests in their hands, influenced by company budgets, office politics, and their own biases. What is within your control, your preparation, your work ethic, the quality of the projects you deliver, your willingness to collaborate and help colleagues, and your commitment to continuous learning. Redirecting your energy from anxiously obsessing over the promotion to excelling in these controllable areas is transformative. It replaces anxiety with agency. Instead of feeling like a passive victim waiting for a verdict, you become an active agent sculpting your own capabilities and character. The outcome is secondary. The primary victory is in knowing you did everything within your power with excellence and integrity. I want you to make this personal right now. Take a moment to mentally scan your current landscape of wants. Identify one specific, persistent desire that's causing you some tension. Now grab a piece of paper or open a notes app and draw a simple line down the center. On the left side, list every aspect of that desire that is outside your control. Be brutally honest. On the right side, list every single thing that is within your control regarding that situation. This act of writing forces clarity. Seeing the two lists side by side is often a revelation. The list on the left is your permission slip to release worry. The list on the right is your action plan, your blueprint for where to invest your energy effectively. Your path forward isn't about suppressing the desire. It's about honoring it by focusing only on the part of the equation you can actually solve. This is how we stop being reactors to our circumstances and start being the architects of our response, building a life of purpose not on the shifting sand of external outcomes, but on the solid rock of our own virtuous action. Now let's bring all of these techniques together into a powerful daily practice that will help you integrate these Stoic principles into the very fabric of your life. This is the practice of the nightly review, a structured reflection on the desires you encountered throughout your day and how you responded to them. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor himself, was a devoted practitioner of this form of meditation. In his personal writings, he describes how he would retreat into his own mind each evening to examine the events of the day, not to dwell on them with regret, but to learn from them with calm detachment. He would ask himself questions like, what bad habit did you curb today? How can you improve tomorrow? This wasn't about self-flagellation. It was about thoughtful, constructive self-auditing, a daily debrief with the most important person in your life, your future self. Imagine ending your day not with mindless scrolling, but with this purposeful 5-minute practice. Find a quiet moment, perhaps just before bed, and mentally walk back through your day. Start from the morning and work forward, looking for those specific moments when a desire or impulse arose. Did you feel that sudden urge to check your phone during a conversation? That pang of envy when you saw someone else's success on social media? That impulse to buy something you saw in an advertisement? That craving for a snack when you weren't truly hungry? For each instance you can recall, gently examine your response. Did you give immediate assent and act automatically? Or did you remember to pause, create cognitive distance, and apply the dichotomy of control? There's no need for harsh judgment here. The goal is simply to observe like a scientist reviewing data. Celebrate the small victories where you exercised restraint, and note the moments where an impulse carried you away, not as failures, but as learning opportunities for tomorrow. To make this practice even more impactful, I strongly suggest keeping a physical desire journal for just 1 week. You don't need anything fancy. A simple notebook will do. Each evening, dedicate 1 page to the day's desires. Create 3 simple columns. In the first column, briefly describe the desire or impulse that appeared. Be specific. Desire to interrupt my partner to make my point, or urge to buy a new kitchen gadget after seeing an Instagram ad. In the second column, note your reaction. Did you act on it immediately? Did you pause and then act, or did you observe it and let it pass? In the third column, apply a quick Stoic analysis. ask, was the object of this desire within my control? What might a wiser response have looked like? The power of writing this down is immense. It moves these fleeting mental events from the abstract realm of thought into the concrete world of ink and paper, where you can see your patterns clearly. Over the course of just 7 days, you will likely notice recurring themes certain times of day, emotional states, or environmental triggers that consistently generate the same types of desires. This journal becomes a mirror revealing the architecture of your own wanting, and with that awareness, you gain the power to redesign it. This nightly ritual is how theory becomes practice, and practice becomes lasting change, building the resilient and desire-wise mind you've been working toward throughout this entire journey. We've journeyed through a powerful toolkit of Stoic practices, each one designed to help you reclaim your mental sovereignty. We began with cognitive distancing, learning to observe our desires like clouds passing in the sky rather than being swept away by their storms. We explored the foundational shift of focusing on virtue, understanding that true success lies in the excellence of our character and efforts, not in external rewards. We practiced the simple yet profound power of delay, inserting an intentional pause between an impulse and our reaction to break the cycle of automaticity. And we embraced the clarifying habit of nightly reflection, examining the architecture of our wants to understand their origin and their hold on us. Together, these techniques form a comprehensive training regimen for the mind, not as a means of harsh suppression, but as a path to profound understanding and liberation. This is the heart of the Stoic promise. Freedom is not found in getting everything you want, but in no longer being enslaved by every passing want. The ultimate goal of all this work is not to live a life of barren austerity, devoid of passion or preference. It is to achieve a state of serene self-command, where you engage with the world from a place of choice, not compulsion. You can still enjoy the beautiful things life has to offer, but you do so with a light touch, holding them loosely because your happiness is no longer contingent upon them. This is the freedom that comes from truly understanding the nature of your own mind and the objects of your desire. It is the difference between being a passenger on a runaway train of impulse and being the skilled engineer, calmly choosing the direction and speed. The Stoics offer us this map to inner peace, a peace that is not dependent on the ever-changing world outside, but built on the unshakable foundation of your own reasoned choice and virtuous action. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who spent a lifetime wrestling with these very human struggles of power, desire, and peace, left us with a potent reminder of what this journey is all about. He wrote, "The greatest empire is to be emperor of oneself." Let that idea sink in for a moment. No external conquest, no amount of wealth or acclaim can compare to the quiet victory of self-mastery. This isn't about achieving a state of perfection. It's about the daily, diligent work of aligning your actions with your principles, of choosing your responses rather than being chosen by your reactions. Your mind is your most valuable territory, and to govern it wisely is the most significant achievement you will ever know. This path is walked one step at a time. You don't need to master all these techniques at once. In fact, trying to do so would be contrary to the Stoic virtue of practical wisdom. The most effective way to begin is to choose just one single practice that resonated most with you from our discussion. Perhaps it's the 10-minute pause rule before an impulse buy. Maybe it's the nightly review of your desires in a journal. It could be the simple act of asking, "Is this within my control?" The next time you feel a wave of anxiety or wanting, commit to practicing that one thing with gentle consistency for the next week. Observe the subtle shifts in your awareness, the small moments where you feel a greater sense of agency. This is how you build the muscle of self-command, not with a single heroic effort, but with the quiet, cumulative power of daily repetition. If you found value in exploring these ancient strategies for modern life, consider subscribing to the channel. We delve into Stoic wisdom regularly, providing practical guides to help you live with more resilience, purpose, and calm. This journey is always richer when shared, so I would love to hear about your experiences. Which one technique will you be starting with? What challenges or insights are you discovering? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be the very thing that inspires someone else to begin their own journey toward a freer, more mindful life. Thank you for watching, and remember, the power to train your mind has been within you all along.